Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to tell you guys about the books that I read in 2024 and tell you about my favorite books of the year. Last year I had a reading goal of I wanted to read more fiction because I tend to read a lot of witchy non-fic, so like spirituality, occult stuff, things like that. I love a good self-help book. I love a good psychology book. I love nonfiction. December of 2023, I discovered ACOTAR, right? We've all been there, hopefully. If not, discover it. And it like literally changed me. So I had a new goal of reading more fiction in 2024. And I would say I did that. I read far more fiction than I did nonfiction. And I wanted to share with you guys my favorite books. If you're curious about what I'm reading at any given point, you can follow me on Goodreads or I just made a Fable account. If you're not on there, you gotta get on there. It's so much cooler. We really like it. It's very girly pop. So I'll leave a link below. I'm not sponsored, nothing like that. I just really like it. And I'll leave my Goodreads too, depending on what you enjoy, because I update both of them still. I probably will move fully to Fable at some point, but I feel like I have some friends on Goodreads still, so I'm like, yeah, I'm still in the middle, but I really like Fable. So if you want to know what I'm reading or every book I read last year, check that out. I'm only going to talk about my absolute favorite books that I read last year. There were some books that I read that I liked, and they're not on this list because it's just like, they weren't loves, if that makes sense. I'll put a list of all the books I read in total if you're curious, and of course those reviews will be on Goodreads, but let's talk about the books I read and I loved last year. So I'll start with my etc. category, because I only have one book in this. And so last year I read Anna Marie Tendler's book, Men Have Called Her Crazy. It's a memoir and I really loved it, okay? I try not to look at reviews before I finished a book just because I don't want to like sway myself, And I was so surprised after reading the book to see the reviews. There were a lot of haters, and honestly, I don't know, man. Honestly, it was weird vibes because I loved the book, and I felt like a lot of the hate comments I was seeing were very, very sus, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know, maybe because of who she used to be married to, people wanted her to talk about that, but as I said in my review, like, I'm sure she signed an NDA, like that's a thing. Also, let's not make it about the men, right? Like, this book is about her experience as a woman with mental health issues and like how that has looked for her throughout her lifetime. I really liked it. I felt very seen in a lot of the chapters. Like, I just felt like it was very vulnerable, very raw, and I love, love, love stuff like that. As you guys know, my poetry book is like very, very vulnerable and talks a lot about mental health and stuff like that. And so I felt like it was in a similar vein to my poetry book. So obviously I liked it a lot. Like, it was very similar to something I would create. Very much like the whole roller coaster of emotions throughout that memoir. It was a super easy read too. Like, I really liked it. It was a very easy read. I loved that she talks a little bit about like astrology tarot, and I was like, okay girl, okay. And so of course I looked it up after the fact, and I believe she's a Gemini, which I think makes a lot of sense. So let's talk fiction. This is the biggest category. So I was gonna divide it between romantasy and general fiction because most of it is romantasy, let's be for real. But I just felt like let's do it all together. So it was the very first book I finished in 2024. I finished on New Year's Day, and it was A Court of Wings and Ruin. We've got Valaris' shirt up in here. I'll leave the link to the Etsy shop I got this from. 2023 in December, I read the first two books. Then I finished A Court of Wings and Ruin. So I had read the first two books. If you haven't read the first two books, like, I don't want to spoil anything, but A Court of Wings and Ruins, dude, gave me heart palpitations. Like, I feel like that was so stressful. Like, I think A Court of Wings and Ruins was the most stressful of the books for me. A Court of Mist and Fury, like, the end of it, that's the second book, was crazy town. Like, crazy, right? But like, I feel like the whole Court of Wings and Ruins was just like emotional terrorism. Like, I felt so, like, I don't know, it was too much. Like, I like it, and I mean all of that, like, good. Obviously, it was too much in a good way, but, like, it was, like, a lot, you know, and, like, it was emotional terrorism. It was so stressful the entire time, but it was so good. I still think the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, was my favorite. Though I think A Court of Wings and Ruin might be like my second favorite in the series. Next, I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is the novella that's between the third and the fourth book, so they call it like 3.5. He's a small guy. A lot of people did not like that book, but I liked it because it was a nice palate cleanser. It was a nice, like, kind of Xanax in between two very chaotic books. And especially like the first three ACOTAR books are so stressful. So 3.5, I wasn't mad that it was low-key. Like, it was very chill. It was very cutesy. Like, it was very much like not a whole lot of conflict happening. And I liked that. Like, I needed a break, right? Like, I was flatlining. At this point, I needed a break. I liked it. I thought it was cute. I thought it was fun. It felt like a, you know, it felt like a Christmas special in like a TV show or something. So I enjoyed it. I'm not mad. People were mad. I wasn't mad. I loved it. The next book I read is called The Bullet Swallower, and so I got this book from my book of the month. I would never have picked up this book on its own. This is a Western, right? And so who is she? Who is she? She's so well read. I would never pick up a Western at a bookstore. But what intrigued me on Book of the Month was that it also had magical realism in it. And it had a non-linear timeline. And so I was very intrigued and just felt this kind of pull towards it. And I'm so glad I read it because, yeah, it was so out of my comfort zone. And not even comfort zone, it was just out of the typical genre that I would typically get. And I always kind of like when you do that and you end up really liking it, because it's like, oh wow, there's so much more to life than just my little niche. It was a beautiful story and I really appreciated it. I really appreciated hearing this Western through the lens of a Mexican person's standpoint, because I feel like you hear Westerns always like Americana type shit, and it's like, there are so many more like Western core things that happened like in Mexico, and I really, really, really loved hearing from like that kind of perspective of the narrator, and I thought it was really interesting, and I just really liked it. Like, the vibes were good. It was crazy. It was a little chaotic too, but I love a good non-linear timeline. Throw me in a timeline, throw me all around, you know, every different century, and because I love past lives and like, you know, making connections between things, and it was very much that kind of essence. And so I really, really liked it. I love it. If you're looking for something that's, you know, a Western or something that is maybe a bit outside of what you typically would read, I really like this one. Then I finished the ACOTAR series thus far, and I read A Court of Silver Flames in February. I'm adding this to the list because I did like it. I'm not gonna stand for any hate, you know what I'm saying? But it was not my personal favorite. I really liked Feyre and Rhysand, and I think it just took some time for Nesta to grow on me. And I will say, like, I think the last, I don't want to give anything away, so I'm gonna say like the last 200 to 100 pages of the book, I'm not sure when it happens, but like when the thing happens and I don't know how to say this. Like, you know, they kind of go to this place or whatever. For those of you who know, there's essentially an event that happens like really close to the end. I would say at least 100 pages from the end. When that happens, it kind of takes on a different essence entirely from what it has been doing the whole book. And I really liked that. I really liked the Valkyrie energy. I really liked the like strong female friendship energy towards the end. Like, I really, really liked that. And I think the last 100 to 200 pages, I really thoroughly enjoyed. And by the end, I was like, oh, that was amazing. I just think the first like half of the book, I was just like definitely not vibing it so much. And I think that was intentional you know, I don't think you're supposed to love Nesta at first. You know, I think she's supposed to grow on her as you kind of gain empathy and understanding and stuff. But I would say for the last like quarter of the book, I really enjoyed that. I'm gonna, of course, read every book that comes out in this series. I think there's at least one more. So next on my fiction list, I read Heartless Hunter. I love this. This was another book of the month. I've been really enjoying book of the month. I went into this book thinking, oh, like this is so predictable. Like I know how it's gonna end. Like, you know, this is just for fun. And it did not end how I thought it was gonna end. And that kind of broke me, but like in a good way. So Heartless Hunter is this kind of romantasy book about a witch and a witch hunter. So it's very enemies to lovers. It's, you know, hiding identity and stuff like that. And yeah, it's really good. I really liked it. I thought maybe some parts were a little predictable, but I certainly did not predict the ending. And the sequel's coming out this year, so I'm really excited to read the sequel. I really, really liked Heartless Hunter. It was good. I'm blushing. The next book that I have on the list is also very different than anything I typically would read. It's a sci-fi book, and it was called Anniebot, and this is another book of the month book. And I, again, would never really probably venture to the sci-fi section too much. This book, Anniebot, is about this robot that is created to service whoever owns it. In this case, it's a man, in all the ways, if you know what I mean. So, and as the story kind of goes on, this Anniebot character, who is kind of like this new technology, she's really super like advanced or whatever, she like starts to gain consciousness and ask a lot of really interesting questions, and it just brings up a lot of topic of like autonomy, and I felt like it was a really interesting metaphor for kind of like awakening to the issues of the world, I guess, and to whatever, you know, you want to insert in that. But it definitely felt like a sort of metaphor for, yeah, that gaining consciousness, that awakening, that realizing that, you know, things are not as they've been told to you, and that, you know, you're an autonomous being. And so it was crazy. It did not end the way I wanted it to, but that's okay, because I'm not God. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, the world doesn't revolve around me. I really liked the story. It was really good. The next book on this list is A Fate Inked in Blood. Another book of the month, of course. This is a romantasy book about Freya. So it's a Nordic-inspired, Freya-inspired romantasy book. I will note it's not like actually about Freya in the same way that like Circe was about Circe. It is just this like warrior girl who is named after the goddess Freya. So that was one thing I kind of was like excited that I thought it was going to be a retelling of Freya's story, but it's not. But that's okay because it's still really good. This book was good. I really liked this book. I felt like it was very fast-paced. Like you get pulled in and it just, shit starts happening and you're like, whoa, you know, we're jumping in. You know, it was just very fast-paced. You know, that was good. I loved all the Nordic stuff. There was like runes, you know, magic, things like that. I love that. There was spice. There was like kind of enemies to lovers, kind of like forbidden love too. It was so good. Like, the spice scenes were good. Like, everything was really good. The ending, though, you guys, I did not expect the ending to... Here's what I've realized. I've realized that I'm just, like, so gullible. I don't know. I'm gullible, and, like, I kind of just don't expect twists and turns, I suppose. Whereas other people do. So I did not expect it to end the way it ended. I'm very excited for the sequel. There is gonna be a sequel, so I'm looking forward to that because I feel like I have questions. And yes, but it was really, really good. If you're into like Nordic stuff, you know, fantasy, warrior goddess energy, forbidden lovers, enemies to lovers, like kind of bad bitch energy too, I think you'll really like it. The next book is Blood Mad by Stephanie Kemler. I love this book. This is the sequel in the vampire book series Bloodborne. And so I read Bloodborne the year before, and then I finally got around to reading and finishing Blood Mad last year, and I love it. I read it in spooky season, and it's just like, it's just perfect. If you watched Nosferatu and you loved it, you'll love this sequel series. It was amazing. It's juicy. Blood Mad was a bit more spicy. It was a bit more spicy than Bloodborne, and I really liked that. I loved like the visuals too that were happening. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but it was really good. So if you like Nosferatu, if you like vampire stuff, I think you'll really enjoy it. And the last fiction book that I read this year, you guys, it was Fantasma. Yes, it was Fantasma. This book I got in my book of the month as everything. I got it and I hadn't like read it, and I kept seeing it pop up everywhere. I was like, is this the next ACOTAR? Like, is this gonna be a huge thing? Everyone kept recommending it. Everybody loved it. So I was like, I have to read it. And I fucking loved it. It was so good. It was so good. If you look up the characters' names, like let me look it up really quick. If you look up one of the characters, I'm gonna do the character's name and then Fantasma. I think the author did this. They have like a sun sign and moon sign. They have a cute little graphic, and it has like a drawing of what the character looks like, which I love character art. And it has, you know, a quote, and then it has their sun sign, moon sign. So the author is like very into astrology, I'm pretty sure. Like her whole vibe, she's very, got that witchy vibe. So I love that. Because I'm always trying to guess, like, in my opinion, like what would be this character's sign. But back to the story, it is like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's so good. It's this romantasy that's set in New Orleans, and it's very paranormal, and you've got this girl who's like a witch, and she kind of like falls into these powers that she doesn't quite understand, and I don't want to spoil anything, but she kind of has to enter this thing. I'm not gonna go into it. I feel like it's so fast paced. Just read it, you'll love it. It's definitely like high stakes. It's like, it's so good. And honestly, for me, like the number one thing was the romance. Like the romance was the thing that got me. Like I feel like, you know, sometimes I'm like really in it for the warrior energy or the character building, but this one, I think the love story was just so good. It was so good that I think that was like my big thing. So like, I loved it. I loved it so much. Yeah, the love story went crazy in this one, and I loved the love interest. He was so cute. Girl, he was so cute. I'm not gonna go into it, but I love that. That's all I have for fiction. Let's move into witchy for those of you who are interested in spirituality, witchy stuff, pagan stuff, anything like that. One of my favorite books that I read this year that was witchy was Madame Pamita's Book of Candle Magic. This is one we read in my witchy book club. I'll leave the link to join that if you'd like. I have had this book for a while, and I had, you know, referenced it for certain things I was doing, but this was the first time I officially read it, and I loved it so much. I love Madame Pamita. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you really should. She's really, really knowledgeable, and I just love her stuff. And if you're interested in like candle magic or, you know, understanding what that is, this is like, I feel like the only book you need. It was just so good. Next was Gabriella Herstick's new book, Goddess Energy. I am a Gabby stan. I love Gabby. And I have all of her books, and Goddess Energy is just like the cherry on top of her already insane, amazing book collection. If you haven't read any of her books, if you're in the witchy sphere, you've got to read them. Inner Witch is my favorite book for beginner witches, folks who are starting their spiritual journey and feel pulled to paganism. I feel like as she releases more books, they kind of get a bit more advanced each time, which I really enjoy. And Goddess Energy, you can read it if you're not like super advanced. You don't even have to like really be witchy. If you're just interested in like working with a goddess or just like learning about the goddess archetypes, I think you'd really enjoy it. It was amazing. It's like the book on goddesses, working with goddess energy, what that means, you know, how to do that, and it was just amazing. I love how it was kind of all these different types of goddesses and these different archetypes that they might kind of represent and stuff, and how to work with that. It was just amazing. I think Gabby's books are so knowledgeable and so amazing, yet so easy to understand and fun, and like they really make you want to get out there and do the journaling questions or the ritual. It's not just like, here's a bunch of info, blah, blah, blah. But it's also not like just floofy and just like cute. Like it's deep, it's in depth, but it's also fun. Next was Heal the Witch Wound. We read this in my Patreon book club, and I essentially, like, we vote on a book, so I let you guys decide what book you want to read. And so initially, I'm gonna be so honest, when we chose this book, I thought like, oh, okay, like this will be very like cute, and like I don't think it's gonna do much for me, but fuck it, we ball, like let's go. I was not low expectations, but like I thought it would be a fun intro, chillin', whatever. I love this book. This book really surprised me. It was so thought-provoking, and I just think really, really pleasantly surprised me with the depth of information and care that went into this book. I just really, really found it surprisingly really, really interesting and helpful. And I think there's something in there for everybody, no matter how long you've been on your spiritual journey. I really think it has something really exciting to share. And the last book, I love this book. This is the book called The Scent of Lemon and Rosemary, Working Domestic Magic with Hestia. This was such a beautiful book for the time I was reading it. I read this book as I moved into my house, and it was just so perfect to really just kind of be absorbing this information about, you know, working with the spirit of your home, Hestia, you know, the hearth, the hearth. One thing I loved so much about this book was the DIY home cleaning supplies, because I am so allergic to so many chemicals, and like cleaning supplies that you buy at like Walmart or wherever, they have so many chemicals that if you're sensitive, if you have eczema, like you might react poorly to those. I certainly do. I have to like scour for the one brand that doesn't have these chemicals that I'm allergic to. And so for simple things like cleaning your countertops, or, you know, wiping down your stove or whatever, like cleaning the windows, anything like that, you know, there were so many recipes in here with just natural ingredients, and I love that too, because then you could put a little essential oil or a little tea mixture into it to kind of infuse it with different herbs for different properties you're wanting to invoke or whatever. And so I really liked it for that. Love this book. This book felt so homey and cozy and like just really good. So if you're looking to connect more to your home and the spirit of your home and the energetic workings of domestic magic, or if you're interested in working with Hestia, I really like this book. Those are my favorite books of 2024. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite book was for 2024. You guys don't even realize, every time you tell me what you're reading or give me a book recommendation, that goes straight to the Goodreads account. Like, it's so, and then I get more recommendations. I'm like, I've heard of this book a million times from you guys. Like, I've got to read it. So I really love hearing about what you're reading. Let me know in the comments below. I did not hit my reading goal last year. I wanted to read 33 books. I only read 19 books last year. It was just a crazy year. It was very crazy. It was more of a writing year for me than a reading year. But this year, I want to read 33 books. So same goal as last year. I have already read 1 or 2 books. I think I finished 2 books already. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good about it. I think I can do it. I would love to hear what you're reading. I would love to hear your reading goal for this year. Yeah, make sure to add me on Fable and Goodreads. And yeah, I'll have all these books listed down below if you're interested in reading any of them. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Bye.